Alright, so I figured it's time to do a 1-year review on the 4066. This will probably be an extended video, and you're just going to have to listen to me kind of gab through my list that I've written down here. So I would say if you're interested in buying a machine like this, you know, listen to all of it, because I'm going to try to cover everything that I have found out in the last year. You know, if you just want to hear my opinions on it, listen. But if you don't want to know any of that, I would probably just turn this video off. So here we go. Bought this machine in May of, or I ordered it in May of 2017, and it arrived and was put together by the dealer by early July of 2017. I think it was dropped off at my house on July 1st or July 2nd of 2017. Don't quote me on that. It is now August of 2018. I've had it a year and a month, basically. I have put 91 hours on it in that year and a month. And the only two modifications I have made to the machine, other than the stock configuration, is I added 2 more lights to the front of the cab, and I added the linear actuator to the skid steer plate on the front of the machine. And I will talk about those more as we go through this list. I have spent most of the 90 hours, I would say a good majority of it, moving pallets and unloading stuff from trailers, trucks, etc. I would say that comprises over, I would say at least 50% of the hours on the machine. Probably another 25% of the time has been spent moving snow. The longest time I have spent in the machine at any one point in time is I spent about 7 hours in it in April of 2018 moving snow, and that was one shot. So I have spent an extended amount of time in the machine at one time, and then other than that, I've spent about another quarter of those hours moving dirt, so driveway, moving rocks around, things like that. So that's how I've spent my time with it. It has performed every task that I have asked of it. I have, one of the things that I have down here in my likes is the power. 66 horsepower is all there. One of my big concerns when I bought this machine was numerous reports online through reviews that basically said that it didn't have the power it needed for its weight. I have not run into that. I have definitely run out of hydraulic power before, but I was asking the machine to do an awful lot. So I really, one of the things that I have circled here also is hydraulics in terms of one of my likes. There were numerous reports about hydraulics not having necessarily the power that they should have, particularly as it comes to the tilt function on the loader. I have not experienced any of that. The machine will lift itself off the ground with the bucket on the ground. I may try to put that at the end of the video. I have been asked by a couple people to do that. So as set up, this is what it came with. It came with the 4066R with a cab, an H180 mechanical self-leveling loader. Mechanical self-leveling was an addition. The big options that I got with the 3-point, the Downforce kit on the 3-point. The third function on the loader, which I have not used yet. I do not have a grapple or anything like that. That is one of those purchases that I was planning on. Fourth and fifth rear selective control valve, which I have used for the rippers on the box blade. I certainly enjoy those. Loader skid steer plate, which I've already talked about a little bit. Love that. And then also I added the radio, and the reason I even talk about the radio is because yes, the radio is expensive, and you could probably find just another type of radio to put in there, but I ordered it with the tractor, and I really like it. It actually has nice sound. It connects to my iPhone, and when I spent that 7 hours in the tractor in April, it was actually very, very nice. So that's certainly a positive. Also standard on the 4066 would be the work lights, and then also the air ride seat. Those would be options on the 4044 and the 4052. The 4066 has those both standard. Also, I believe the rear wiper is standard on the 4066. So without further ado, to try to keep this video somewhat short, The only three tractor issues that I've had, when I say issues, I'm talking about things that I had to consult the dealer with or had to go back for the dealer. Right after I got it, it had a coolant reservoir leak. Evidently the coolant reservoir, the overflow reservoir was cracked, and that was actually from the factory. And basically, near the top of the coolant reservoir, there was just a pinhole. It would drip out anytime the tractor got hot. I've had an issue with the loader lines on numerous occasions. If you look in here, the loader lines are very, very close to the side of the tractor, certainly rubbing on the panels, which is not necessarily ideal when you're talking about all the sand and the environment. Also, the loader lines down there, it's a very tight environment, and there's 6 lines when you consider that third control valve for the grapple. So not necessarily the best design there. I don't know how you would redesign it, but it could certainly use some redesign. And along with it, the only other problems I've had is I've had some hydro leaks. That is more or less along the lines of the dealer. Because I have added all the extra hydraulics to this machine, which we'll come back here and look. I mean, if you look in there, it is just a forest of hydraulic hoses. I can't imagine being the tech to try to put all that together. When you're talking about adding basically 3 selective control functions on a relatively small framed machine, you are going to end up with some lines that aren't tight, things like that. When I first got it, I think it had to go back to the shop for something else, and they tightened some lines then, and then it had to go back one more time because I wasn't going to risk getting in there and damaging something and me tightening them. The only other minor comment I would have to say, which this is in the book, to do this, you do have to check the loader mounting bolt torque. It's a little hard to get to, but you do need to do that because some of my loader bolts have become loose over time. In fact, one fell off at some point because I wasn't paying attention, so that's my own fault. Not necessarily a machine problem or anything else. You can only get them so tight from the factory, and then when you start working it, obviously then you need to check the torque there. Complaints. Complaints on the machine. Obviously, with any machine, you're going to probably find more complaints than you are positives. Now, I will go ahead and preface that. I really, really like this machine. I have no large complaints. Most of my complaints are very nitpicky. It has to do with fit and finish and some design aspects. When I first got it, I complained about the oil dipstick. A couple people even made comments on that video basically saying that I was hyper-focusing. If you've watched a lot of my videos, you know that I'm pretty anal retentive when it comes to maintenance on machines. I change the oil a lot. I check the oil every time I get in them, or almost every time I get in them. And so I do a lot of pre-checks. Pre-checks are actually pretty hard on this machine in terms of like air filter and oil, and checking the oil because the dipstick is behind the loader frame. Not that that's necessarily a big deal, it just makes it extremely difficult if you're in a darker environment, so say like a shop that doesn't have very many lights, or if it's getting dark outside, something like that, makes it extremely difficult to check all that. Next on my list, the mechanical self-leveling loader. It made both my likes and my kind of complaints list. I really, really like the mechanical self-leveling loader, mostly because I have done a lot of moving of material. I have used my pallet forks a lot with this machine. When it comes to pallet forks, if you're going to move a lot of material, particularly if you're going to lift it with pallet forks, etc., mechanical self-leveling bucket is the way to go. It makes my life so much easier when I'm putting stuff on and off of pallet racking in the shop, things like that, or when you are taking stuff off a trailer and putting it on the ground, or if you're unloading something that's not quite as stable as it should be. Makes it very, very nice. At the same time, mechanical self-leveling loader for a front-end loader bucket is somewhat troublesome. It lacks 2 degrees of rollback from the regular bucket. That 2 degrees of rollback isn't necessarily a humongous issue. I think it's one of those things that you learn over time how to deal with the problem. But you still have to learn how to deal with the problem, and I haven't yet to do that. I think with more practice I will get better at it. I certainly think if you did this day in, day out, it would be something that you could recover from pretty quickly. It just has to do with when you go into a pile, you know, your bucket's coming in level and you go to roll the bucket back to try to dig, and basically the bucket doesn't roll back quite enough to make all that material roll back into the bucket, particularly when you're moving dirt. Rocks have not been a problem. I've moved quite a bit of river rock with this machine for our gardens and stuff. Most of our gardens are river rock. You can see like that right there. Rocks and gravel and stuff are not a problem at all. But when you're moving driveway, like subsurface driveway material, so say something with a lot of sand in it, or some type of fine material, or if you're moving topsoil, it can certainly present a problem. A material that doesn't move quite as well. Probably one of my biggest disappointments is the overall fit and finish of the machine. When I mean fit and finish, I'm talking about both from the Deere aspect and from the dealer aspect. From the dealer aspect, I'm not really going to get too much into that, because that's just between me and the dealer. Different dealers are going to be different, or every dealer is going to be different, so it's not something that I can necessarily control or really even complain about, because there's no reason for me to complain about it. They fixed everything that I needed, but for the most part, you know, it just has to do mostly in the cab. You just get a good shot of the dealer right there. Actually, that is not the dealer that I bought this tractor from. They have since purchased the dealership. It was actually purchased. Kibble purchased the dealer I bought it from after I bought the machine. So with fit and finish, you know, just like body panels and everything, or interior panels, they're just not all that great. For instance, up here on the roof of the cab, hopefully the camera will adjust to this, that back vent right there, there's nothing that can be done about it hanging down. You can kind of see it up there. That's just kind of one of the disappointments. And lots of little things that contribute to that. You know, in terms of overspray on components that shouldn't necessarily have overspray, and that's from Deere itself. And so, you know, like weights. I know this is pretty petty, but you see the weights aren't completely painted. Well, they're not completely painted, they're already starting to rust. So really at some point, I'm going to need to pull those weights off of there, and I'm going to need to paint them, because I don't want them to sit there and rust. So lots of fit and finish details. Actually, the dealer was very good, and they painted a number, like the box blade and stuff had some paint, some chipped paint, and they actually went in and painted over them, sanded them out and painted it, which I was very, very appreciative of. Next thing on my list is non-greasable components. There are several components on this machine that I would love to see as greasable components. I think that is my anal retentiveness and maintenance coming through. But for instance, one of the things is the steering cylinder. There is no grease point on the steering cylinder. I don't know why. There is obviously a grease zerk. You can kind of see it there. The front pinion, or the front axle bolt, does have a grease zerk on it. So there is some, but the tie rods aren't greasable. It just makes me kind of disappointed. Maybe it's a lifetime component that'll last 5,000 hours. I don't know. Also, once again, not something I don't think we could do much about, but the cab is a little small. If you're a bigger person, I'm 6 feet. Obviously, you've seen me in videos. I'm not necessarily a light individual. I wish the seat went back about another inch. Mostly because over here on the front end loader controls, the lockout for the front end loader can hit my knee sometimes when I'm reaching down for the pedals. But it's extremely difficult without I'm sure a major redesign to make that cab any bigger. It is certainly much better than the 3R series. I sat in a couple 3R series cabs. Actually, I sat in a number of 3R series cabs, and the 4 Series cabs are much better than the 3 Series cabs in terms of size. Very nice cab though. Like I said, don't take this as necessarily a complaint. These are just issues that I've identified. One of the big things is view to the loader, and I'll talk about another thing along with that, but it's just very hard to see when you're moving pallets around. Obviously if I had a skid steer it'd be completely different. I didn't want a skid steer for multiple reasons, but it's very hard to see a pallet fork, things like that. I am working on adding cameras. I have all the wires set up. I have all the power and everything in the system design now. I just need to actually put it in there. Along with that, the skid steer plates, while I absolutely love the skid steer plates and I would 100% recommend them, you see one of the problems. One of the problems is the plates can get off of, they're not in alignment. This is because there's no way to keep the plates together. The only way I could see it is running some type of bar from both of the hydraulic cylinders. I don't know if that's even feasible, but certainly something that I'm not particularly happy about, because it makes some things that are skid steer compatible that have open backs like my pallet forks, it makes them extremely difficult to put on. But I would 100% recommend the skid steer plates because it makes attachment so much easier to find. And then the last thing is the wipers. The wipers are absolutely god-awful. I'm just going to go ahead and tell you. They work, but they have washers on them. They don't work very well. Just not impressed with the wipers, either the rear or the front. The front's a little bit better than the rear. The rear is just absolutely useless. And also the lights. The lighting package could use some upgrades, but I think Deere in this point is trying to fill a price point by adding lights, more LED lights. You're going to raise the cost quite a bit over the old halogen style lights. So I certainly understand the machine's trying to fit a price point. So I don't necessarily think that's a big issue, but I do wish it came with more lights, because I will add more as we go along. So now my likes, because I figured I would end on something positive. Mechanical self-leveling loader, I've already talked about it, but I figure it's top of my list. It makes pallet work very, very easy. I've talked about the power. Really like the overall power of the machine, both the horsepower and the engine hydraulics. I think that horsepower will even become more evident. Hopefully sometime in the next 6 to 12 months, I do get a chance to load the rear tires with rim guard. That will make traction a lot better, because at this point I've never fully maxed out the engine except if I'm pushing snow. And I am pushing so much snow it's not even funny. If you go back and look at some of my videos moving snow this past winter, you will see, it's 8-foot snow pusher, and you can fill the 8-foot snow pusher up with relatively wet heavy snow, and you can still push it, and you can even start from a dead stop. I think I did that one time. And you will run out of traction long before you run out of horsepower. But I think that the power will become more apparent once I load those tires and get some more weight on it. Next thing, hydraulics. I have no complaints over the hydraulics. A lot of people have, a lot of the reviews that I read, which kind of worried me about this machine when I bought it, was the hydraulics. I have had no problems with them. I have had some binding up of the mechanical self-leveling loader, but that is a relatively minor occurrence. It doesn't occur very often. It's very specific. Obviously, it depends on the task you're doing. Love the hydraulic or the hydrostatic controls. Makes my life a lot easier, particularly the E-throttle. You basically mash the pedal and it goes. One thing that I will, before I get away from the cab, AC and heat work absolutely amazing. I was a bit concerned at first. I couldn't get my heat to work great, and at the end of this winter, I think I had a bubble in the line. Somebody even suggested it. I think when we took the top off to put those wires in there for the new lights, I think that we moved a bunch of tubes around. I think that really helped the heat. I think we got some air out of the system from where they put the block heater in. So back here, One thing I wanted to touch on real quick, there have been a lot of threads across numerous websites about the validity of a Downforce kit. I think this kit was either $750 or $1,050. I can't remember off the top of my head. I have found it incredibly useful. It applies an extra 500 pounds of downforce through those hydraulic cylinders. Basically, there's a switch in the cab that you press, it will activate it, and basically what happens is, this is just a one-way cylinder. There's a valve that will push hydraulic fluid in and pull this ram down and apply 500 pounds of force to the rear hitch. I have not noticed any traction issues with it. I have noticed that the rippers on the box blade itself weighs 1,000 pounds. It's a 4178. I can't remember. Anyway, 4178. It weighs 1,000 pounds by itself. You add another 500 pounds, makes those rippers dig in really, really well in our driveway. I think it was a very worthwhile addition. Now, with that, I also, with the Downforce kit, I could no longer have both a top and tilt and a power beyond. Now, I have no intentions of ever putting backhoe on this machine, so power beyond wasn't necessarily a huge deal. Deere says that you can't use a top and tilt kit, which is a hydraulic top link and a hydraulic tilt. It says you cannot use a top and tilt kit with this setup. I don't necessarily see why. It seems to me that it would be extremely easy to set up some way to remove the Downforce kit so you could put a hydraulic tilt in. The only thing I can think of is a hydraulic tilt kit is going to cause some interference here. I can't see, I've gone through all of the hydraulic diagrams and I don't see a problem there in terms of theory of operation that's published in the technical manual, at least not that I've identified. So I don't know why they say you can't use it, but I find the Downforce kit to be very, very useful. I can't say that it's going to be useful to everyone, but in my opinion, it is worth the money. So you can disagree or agree. That's just my experience. But I know that a lot of people have been interested in it. There's been a lot of threads since these machines came out with the Downforce available. That certainly it's one of those things that is worth commenting on. The only other thing that I would comment on in terms of the hitch is the auto hitch is amazing. Love the auto hitch, even though I have the quick hitch on here. At the same time, I've also gone ahead and we've put the telescoping arms, the lift arms on. I did that in case, since I collect old stuff, I did that because you never know when I'm going to have something that's non-quick hitch compatible and I got to take the quick hitch off. But that is my kind of year in review on this 4066 and my opinions. I'm guessing this video is close to 24 minutes now, or it'll probably be 25 minutes by the time I'm done yammering. Hopefully it has been enlightening. I'm trying to think about anything else that I've come across that I wasn't necessarily, that I'm happy about or unhappy about. But I think I've covered just about all of it. So I think at this point, if you have questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. I will try to respond to them. If you have specific questions on how this machine was set up, please feel free to ask them. Obviously, I only have 91 hours on this thing. I've probably only spent 80 to 83 of those hours in the machine, and then other people have operated it the rest of the time. So, you know, I don't have a lot of hours in it. I don't use this machine commercially. It's a very uniquely set up machine. It's certainly set up for my specific uses. So keep that in mind. When I set out to buy this machine, I wanted something that would last me a long time through various iterations of our property. And so just because I have some options on here doesn't necessarily mean that they're the best option for everyone. For instance, the Downforce kit. Here in the upper Midwest, we have relatively hard ground. I have a gravel driveway. Say if you live in Florida where you've got clay and sand, because I'm originally from Florida, if you have clay and sand, you probably don't need a Downforce kit because it's probably not going to do you much good unless you're working on a Lime Rock Road all the time. If you're working on a Lime Rock Road all the time, maybe it's worth it. But, you know, ask me questions about how it's set up. I will try my best to answer them. My email is my username at gmail.com. So if you need to send me an email, I do try to respond to most people. If you do not get a response from me in like a week, email me again. Because sometimes I get busy and I'll open an email and then I'll forget to answer it. And it's unread at that point, or it's read at that point. It shows up as read, and you know, I don't see it at that point. So hopefully this is helpful if you are looking to buy a 4 Series. I really like this one. Put 91 hours on it. Not everybody's going to like them. You know, every end user is different and has different needs and different wants and how they're going to use the machine. For me, this was almost the perfect machine. The only machine that I have seen since I got this one that I would rather have is I set in a 5115R. I don't know, about 5 months ago, and I actually drove it. That was an amazing tractor. I would love to have it. Cat 2 hitch, 115 horsepower. Just absolutely fantastic machine. It would be perfect for me, but it was also twice the cost of this one. So no, it wasn't twice the cost. It was almost twice. So yeah, if you have questions, ask. If not, thanks for watching.